Beneficial Life, a company with $16 billion in insurance and assets of $1.6 billion. Media holdings including Bonneville International Corporations, which owns a chain of 25 radio stations, 7th largest in the country, a television station, and other media operations. Hawaii Reserves, which manages extensive real estate developments in Hawaii such as the Disney-esque tourist trap, Polynesian Cultural Center, the major source of PCC's labor force, Brigham Young University, Hawaii, and more than 150 farms and ranches, including the largest cattle ranch in America, making the LDS Church one of the biggest landowners of the nation, with around 1 million acres of farm and ranch land, roughly equal to the size of the state of Delaware. Incidentally, the church's religious buildings and property, like the magnificent Salt Lake City Temple, are considered expenses and not sources of revenue. A big focus of church funds is on their humanitarian efforts. Every year, tens of millions of dollars are donated to carry out outreach activities in 178 countries, which also happen to contribute to church growth. And like many religions, it claims to be the fastest growing religious sect in the world. But where did this tax-exempt multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation come from?
The Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion, The Mormons, by David Fitzgerald, is now available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
Everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are still listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. I have with me Dan, who can't spell his last name, Fincke. And his blog, of course, is Camels with Hammers. And it was so funny because I thought I knew how to pronounce your name, and I was looking around your blog, and you had a video introduction of yourself. Do you remember putting that up?
Yes.
And it says, a brief video introduction. And I'm like, oh, this will be nice. And I'm like, it glitched. It just stopped. And I'm like, no, it's really like 2 seconds long. What the hell, man?
It's a brief video introduction.
It is brief. It's hard to get any shorter than that. And I do notice scrolling through your website that apparently you're some kind of a Star Wars fan.
Yes, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Not the EU, but the movies.
Right. And what did you think of the new one? And for the listeners, if you haven't seen it, get a life. But so we're going to spoil all kinds of shit here. What'd you think?
I actually made a video about this with my fiance, and we had over 30,000 views. I was so proud. I've never had a video that's been that popular.
Wow.
I actually really didn't like it. I felt like it was very cowardly of Disney to recycle so much from the original movies, and I thought that they I thought that they were more interested in introducing the new characters, and that they just didn't do justice to the old characters. They saw them as sort of there for nostalgia, there to pull in the old folks to bring their kids so that they could hook the kids on the new characters. And I just felt like it just was a disaster, personally.
What, you didn't like the ending where Han Solo rode up to heaven on a white horse?
That was inspired.
That was not expected.
That was inspired. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to give spoilers away, but yeah, like I actually, as much as people hated the prequels, I enjoyed that Lucas expanded the universe with them. You know, he really it was just vividly filled with color and filled with ideas, and I mean, I know that there's flaws to the movies, but I really felt like he handled the themes better. I mean, he could have written a better overall story, but I felt like the fundamental themes he'd gotten right, and he just built a big world with lots of planets and lots of creatures, and I felt like he just kept Star Wars moving in the creativity direction, even if some of the dialogue and acting was stiff. I felt like at least it made Star Wars still adventurous, whereas I felt like this movie was extremely conservative. It was just recycling ideas rather than doing anything new. So.
What was interesting, my daughter wanted to see this movie, and she hadn't seen any Star Wars since she was a little kid, because she's now 19. And so what we did was we have 4, 5, and 6 on DVD, but I also have 4, 5, and 6 on Laserdisc before they were re-edited.
Oh,
yeah. So those are some keepers, but I haven't watched it in a long time, and my Laserdisc player broke like a decade ago. So we watched the DVD versions, and I kept going, what the fuck is that? I don't remember that being in there. And part of me is I don't remember. I don't know if I don't remember because I'm getting old enough that I don't remember, or if that was not there and it was added or removed. But it did seem like the whole thing was a little more, I don't know, a little more campy. The edit where it was just so we saw 4, 5, and 6 so she could go see 7 and kind of be up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the special editions were mostly a disaster. I mean, there's a few good things that I thought were cool. I think it was neat that he worked Jabba the Hutt into New Hope. Stuff like that I thought was neat. There were a few things that made the themes tied to the prequels a little better, but a lot of the changes were pretty bad. I agree.
Well, and I think, it's kind of one of those things. Once you put it out, just leave it.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, how many versions of Blade Runner have I bought? So I guess I'm not the best person to comment on that.
Have you ever seen, you know how people do those vertical videos where they'll turn their camera on the side and instead of, on YouTube, instead
yes.
it'll be a full picture.
Right.
They have a slim thing in the middle.
Right.
And then 2 black bars on either side. So I saw this great video criticizing that practice. And it was complaining that if everyone keeps doing that, they're not going to make movies correctly. They won't make them horizontal anymore. They're going to start having to make them vertical. And then there's one of the jokes the guys go, and then they'll come out with, George Lucas will re-release Star Wars again, the skinny edition.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's one of those things that some movies are filmed in a much wider aspect ratio, and for the longest time, all of our TVs in home were 3x4.
Yeah.
So you would have one of the most classic things I loved is people sitting at a table, eating, and they're each on the far extreme of the frame. But when you have to edit the video down, if you just lop off the 2 sides, you're just looking at an empty dinner table. and so what they would do is this thing called pan and scan, and the camera would focus at the person who's talking, and then they would slide over and focus on the person who talks next, and keep going this back and forth, and you kind of get this yo-yo effect. Or they can, of course, jump from one side to the other, but it ruins the entire feel of a scene and the aesthetics of it, because the director probably made it that way for a purpose. But now we have the TV screens are big enough that you can watch a movie that was filmed 3x4 and have bars on the sides, or you can have one that's 16 or 9x16 or even wider and still have bars on the tops, so you can keep it the way it was meant to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny because on that topic, Star Wars is like a great modern example. There's this wonderful scene in The Phantom Menace where Darth Maul opens up his lightsaber. And it goes to the 2 sides of the screen. It fills the whole wide screen,
right?
And it looks so good in the wide screen. And when I watched it on the pan and scan for the TV, the video version, it all you see is the little bits of red on either side and his lightsaber. Like you see any of that beautiful, screen wide lightsaber. Yeah, there's a number of shots like that in movie history that if you see them, there's sometimes on websites you'll see the 2 next to each other and you go, holy mackerel.
Yeah, it totally changes the effect that they were going for.
Yeah.
So other than Star Wars and philosophy, what cooks your goose or gets you all excited?
What else gets me all excited? Well, there is Game of Thrones.
I haven't seen it. Tell me about it. Am I missing out?
It's just the most wonderful show. It has this ability to... It's a show that I've never been into medieval fantasy stuff. I'm not that kind of a geek.
Yeah.
Many other kinds of a geek, not that kind, or haven't been in the past. But what they do is it just sort of takes everything that is nonsense and lie about ordinary fiction, where there's happy endings and people can get away with violating the customs, and then everybody learns a lesson that, hey, maybe that custom shouldn't be so rigidly adhered to. Let's move on. Instead of that, it's everyone who, people violate the customs, they lose their heads, there's this gritty, brutal realism to it, that kind of really captures the violence of war and The characters are so well sketched. I mean, they're just really exquisitely developed. And it just becomes literally epic in scale, between these various houses and the politics between them. And then on top of it, they just layer in ice zombies and dragons and this wonderful undercurrent of exciting fantasy stuff that's like layered in with the most fascinating political intrigue, character development, and this sense that like the plot twists are so inventive. They're stolen from history for the most part, but history that nobody ever bothered to learn.
Right.
So it's surprising. And just the plot twists are incredible. It's just an extraordinary show. Absolutely addicting.
So I'll have to put that on my list then, huh?
Yeah, you have to watch it. And you have to watch it before April.
Boy, what happens in April?
It's coming back. Season 6.
Oh, well, I don't get that kind of TV.
Yeah, so it is, and what happens is now everyone's caught up because there's 5 books and there's 5 TV seasons, and there's supposed to be 2 more books, but they're not out yet, so no one knows what's going to happen in the last 2 seasons here. They're going to premiere on TV with everybody in the dark, so if you watch it right now, you can catch up, and then and then it'll be totally new for everyone together.
Now, another topic you touch from time to time, of course, is religion.
Yes.
I guess you can have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess that's a big topic. I tend to think, that I'm mostly concerned with, criticizing religion in terms of people's rights to be able to think about the fundamental problems of life rationally. There's this terrible thing where Stephen Jay Gould, very famously, the scientist, the biologist, very famously said that, science deals with facts, and then religion deals with this, with the realm of values and meaning and ethics. And what I find really, really upsetting about that is that he's just said, it's just sort of like a scientist saying, just please leave me alone, go do ethics or something, and treating ethics like it's something that should be left to the dogmas of 2,000 years ago, or left to a process of people trying to use supernaturalistic beliefs and these completely unaccountable ways of interpreting what they think God says to them or God said to their scripture writers or whatever. And it's just a completely irresponsible thing to relegate the most important matters in life, ethics and meaning in life and our beliefs about whether or not we're free and, how our politics should be, to relegate that whole sphere to traditionalism and dogma and authoritarianism and people just going with their hunches and calling it God is really, really the height of irresponsibility. Like, people defend religious belief that's faith-based. They defend that on the grounds that, well, these other things are this other part of life that matters. But it's precisely that other part of life. It's precisely because it matters that it shouldn't be something that's guided by dogmatism and authoritarianism and this slavish need to interpret your beliefs as consistent with what they thought 2,000 years ago or 1,400 years ago, or even older. And so that's really the crux of my problem with religion, is that, that these are really rationally accessible topics. They're philosophy topics, how we know things, the meaning of life, ethics, these are really rational subjects for inquiry. And I think it's just there's a horrible subjectivism that thinks that that these are just matters of your feelings and that they can be matters that should be resolved with, trying to reconcile your life to clearly mythical stories that sometimes are valuable and sometimes aren't. And so I really believe that even if false beliefs will give people pleasure or what have you, that's not really enough. They have to, we have to be accountable for what we believe about reality itself, about ethics, etc., because these are fundamentally important. This just guides our lives. And so as a result of that, I'm a critic of faith-based believing that is, willing to commit oneself to somehow, even whether in a fundamentalist way or even in more liberal ways, try to always interpret what you believe as consistent with some religious tradition, with some unaccountable belief in what God thinks. and instead, to take responsibility. And I feel like